Welcome to the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. My name is Jin Ong and I'm your host. I practice as an osteopath and psychosomatic therapist and am fascinated by the mind-body connection and how your physical body is a manifestation of your emotional state. I help people get unstuck from their chronic pain and live the life they want, grounded in values and driven by purpose. My aim is to create awareness to the underlying emotions behind pain, injury, and disease in the body. Join me to learn more about the story of your body, what different issues may indicate, how to release emotions so that you can prevent problems, as well as inspiring pain story interviews. Hi Tania, thanks for joining me on the podcast today. How are you?
Thanks. Hi, Jen. I'm great. Doing well, thanks.
Cool.
How are you doing?
Whereabouts are you based?
I am in Vancouver, Canada, on the West Coast. Yeah.
Nice. I think a lot of people from where I live in Wanaka, because we're in a bit of a ski town, everyone knows Whistler.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a restorative movement educator as my sort of new, more recent gig. So during the pandemic lockdown, I kind of rediscovered my passion for movement and instructing movement because I had a lot of time to read, and I kind of pulled out my old yoga training books and stuff. And so that was after, for the last couple of years, sort of working on another business as my other side is a visual artist. So I had a clothing line that I was doing my own artwork with the textiles. And so that's sort of my other life. And I've been a very I just like exploring different aspects of life all the time. So I've had a lot of different lives and jobs and passions. Yeah.
It's been nice for a lot of people, as I've mentioned in a few of the interviews, just taking that step back from normal life and reassessing what it is you want to do with your life once lockdown gets lifted.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a clinical somatic therapist, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so clinical somatics is my focus as a restorative movement teacher, and it's based around a method taught by Thomas Hanna, who was pretty cutting edge at the time in terms of figuring out physical therapies that were training people to basically heal themselves through movement. So it's an active practice that teaches the student to move their bodies and feel their muscles and release their tension through really specific exercises. And so he was trying to help people become more independent with their bodies and their pain, and treating their own physical pain related to tension, rather than having them dependent on coming to physical therapists all the time, or massage, or like these more passive practices where people manipulate your body for you.
Yeah.
So I've been learning and now teaching that method, which initially I discovered through my mom, who brought me to a somatic yoga class, which uses some of the same methods mixed with yoga principles. And that sort of made me realize how much my body was benefiting from it. And it did actually get me out of my own chronic pain, which I haven't had in like 3 years now since I started doing it.
Yeah. So what led you to clinical somatic therapy? Was it your own pain?
Yes, basically. It was for about 8 years before. So I guess that's just over 10 years ago, I first started getting pretty chronic shoulder bursitis, and it was kind of coming back in flare-ups every 3 months or so, and that would in turn create a lot of tension through my upper back and neck, and then I would wake up one morning and just not be able to move, and then it would stay like that for a month or so, and I'd be taking muscle relaxants and trying to do little movements and exercise to loosen it up, but it always took a long time. And I was at a desk job, so it sort of just perpetuated that basically, because I had to sit so much.
Yeah. I'll just explain what bursitis is to our listeners. So in the shoulder joint, the shoulder is one of the most mobile joints in your body. And for those of you who do have injuries to the shoulder, like rotator cuff tears is something that's really common, where you tear the muscles in the shoulder that control it. But then you have these little structures called bursa, which are like fluid-filled sacs, like cushions that sit in between the tendon and the bones, and they stop the friction happening between the tendon and the bone. However, if you've got poor mechanics or you've had an injury, sometimes you can start to friction that bursa, and that little fluid-filled sac becomes really inflamed, and it's often like a pinching feeling. So people have difficulty reaching overhead, and then if it gets really inflamed, getting an ache in their shoulder and perhaps some stiffness. So that's called bursitis. Usually you can go and get an ultrasound and it can show if the bursa has been pinched or if it's inflamed. But again, it comes back to listening to your body and knowing that something is up. And obviously when there's pain in the body, it will compensate. And so other muscles will tighten up, and usually the muscles that connect to the shoulder, that connect to the neck, then start to seize up. So it's a sign that it's progressing and perhaps that your body isn't coping with it. So Tania, what do you think triggered it? What was going on for you at the time? You were working in a desk job, you were doing some other stuff as well?
Yeah, I mean, my job, my day job was usually moderately stressful, and it
what was the job?
I was in education at a botanical garden, so we were developing seasonal programming in a pretty popular large membership base that went to the courses, and so it was sort of a constant roller coaster of creating content, releasing content, selling content, just like so. And it was an interesting work dynamic, just in terms of the political environment of the place as well. So it was always a bit, I really enjoyed a lot of it, but it definitely started to wear me down. And I never felt always like I was fully, I guess, in the right place in terms of my own path. And sometimes I didn't feel like I was fully appreciated, and just started to mentally get to me. I went from being sort of a really confident, vibrant, fun loving artist to someone who didn't really know what to do anymore. So yeah.
Why did you transition from your visual artwork to working at the botanical?
Basically, the 2008 economic downswing happened, and I needed to find a stable job, and I had the opportunity to work there because I did have sort of other past work that would allow me to do that position, basically, in terms of like teaching kids and stuff like that. So I've always sort of had side gigs, and then that one ended up becoming the main one. And just the need to have a regular income eventually took over, since my work as an artist at the time was just, fluctuating too much. And then once the economy crashed, it was like, well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are you still drawn to do your work as an artist?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty focused on wellness right now, but I know it will always be there for me, and I think it'll come back at some point over the next while. but I definitely needed to step away from it for a while, since for the last couple of years I have been focusing more on it again with my clothing design stuff. But that wasn't feeling quite right either, because it just felt like I really needed to do something that made me feel like I was really helping people.
Mm.
And as pretty as my clothing was, it's you know, it didn't feel totally useful in terms of, and I was trying to make eco-friendly stuff, and you know, I met some really amazing people through my journey doing markets and getting stuff into stores and stuff, but it didn't really fill my soul
Yeah.
completely.
It's
Yeah.
hard work when you're doing it all yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when Violet was first born and we started her in cloth nappies and none of the pants would fit. So I got into making baby pants for cloth nappy
Oh
baby.
yeah.
And I was like, man, I really appreciate people that make and design all of their own stuff. And I was at markets as well. And yeah, it's full on. So I
Yeah,
appreciate what you
definitely.
were doing. And I wasn't actually even designing it myself. I mean, I designed the pattern, but not all the patterns that actually went on the fabric.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, which shoulder was affected?
So I guess first, when I was like in my early 20s, I almost tore my rotator cuff in my right side as a landscaper for a summer. And then both my shoulders were kind of equally hurting with the bursitis. And it would sort of fluctuate between the left one starting or the right one, but it was, the tension explosion was mostly on my right side.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Can I share with you the interpretation of the shoulders? We'll go
Yeah,
through
definitely.
mainly the right and we'll touch on the left because you had both, and just
Mm-hmm.
see if you can relate to it, and maybe we can go down that path and explore it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Cool. So
yeah,
for
definitely.
me, you know, emotions get stored in different parts of the body, and the shoulders overall represent that sense of responsibility. And you'll commonly hear people say, I feel like there's such the, a burden on me. So a burden on the shoulders, or the weight of the world on my shoulders. And then when that weight externally gets lifted, they say, oh, it feels like the weight has just lifted. So we can use those analogies to interpret what is actually going on in someone's life. And I like to split the body into the left and right side. So the left body is the feminine aspect, which governs emotions around intuition, creativity, and emotional expression, which is very much the artist in you. And feminine doesn't get expressed for a lot of people in today's society, particularly Western society. The right side of the body is what most people can relate to. And this is the masculine side, which governs emotions around being very structured, analytical, processed, physical, active, very much in the logical brain, career orientated, money orientated, those kind of things. And so when the right shoulder starts to give discomfort, especially with rotator cuff injuries or bursitis, I will often ask people, or go over those masculine qualities and see if anything resonates with them. You just see the change in their body language. Maybe they get a little bit flushed, or they're acknowledging, or maybe they're even tearing up because they realize how right-brained they are. Um, and in particular, when the shoulder starts to seize up and stops wanting you to use it, it's usually around giving out too much of your physical energy. So doing too much for others, in a physical labor sense. Maybe the labouring, for example, the landscaping that you were doing, but
Mm-hmm.
also just doing for other people at the expense of your own energy. So usually when we get shoulder discomfort, it is the body saying, hey, just check in and keep some of that energy to yourself. Left side is around taking on other people's emotional baggage. So maybe at the time when your left shoulder was giving you issues, were people dumping on you, and maybe you didn't have those set boundaries to say, no, I can't listen to this, because inside you've got your own turmoil going on, trying to work out what direction you want to head in and what makes you happy as well. So yeah, that's my interpretation of the shoulders. Shall we go into that a little bit more, and can you resonate with any of that?
Yeah, I know that. I think there's definitely something there with the especially since it's mostly my right side that was the problem, I definitely felt like work was taking over more often, and that I had to make sure I made enough money. And in my job at the garden, just doing, keeping on top of all the different stuff that was happening all the time, and feeling like I couldn't let them down, because I did care about their mission and everything. And also the weight of the shoulders. I remember when I gave my notice that I was going to leave, it literally was like a weight off my shoulders. Yeah. And around that time is when I also happened to be starting to, I was doing flotation therapy, like float therapy, just for my body. And that was helping with my pain. But like basically around the time I gave my notice and was leaving that job, I stopped having as much problems. So maybe that's connected. It's probably a bit of both, like figuring out what the problem was, but also not having that stress and
yeah. And so after you left that job, what was the next step?
I found a more casual job working from home for a really wonderful store in my city that was focused on featuring local artists. So that was my segue into getting back into art again, because that was really what I wanted to do, was focus on the business I was building with the design stuff again. So I worked with her part-time while I built my clothing line more. So, but during that time, the owner of the store was a very really amazing businesswoman, and very more spiritual, like kind of introspective and very aware. And her store, I worked in the store sometimes as well, and it was just a really beautiful, peaceful space. And it really got me tapping back into that part of me again. Yeah. And the more feminine side. And it was it helped me crack open again and sort of start thinking about what my real values were and everything, and where I wanted to go. So that was the next step.
Because I find that a lot of artists are very in the feminine, and it is finding that balance of utilizing the masculine energy to put yourself out there and actually build a sustainable business around your creative work as well. So with your pain, did you seek any therapy?
Yeah, I definitely over the years went to different physiotherapists, and I had massage therapy regularly whenever I had problems, but I couldn't really afford to do it constantly. And the physiotherapists always did help out with sort of the rehabilitation from the major pain, like when it was really bad. But again, like because of the costs involved, you sort of just go while it's really bad, and then try to figure it out from there, right? And unfortunately, you can't really kind of keep up a regular relationship with them unless you've got the money to do that. So, but the most recent physiotherapist I had a couple years ago, when I was just getting so fed up and I was like considering, do I need to have surgery, injections? I don't know. She really pointed out the postural imbalances in my upper body and asked me about my ergonomics at work. And so that was while I was still at the desk job. And so, yeah, basically she was able to get she wrote, a note for me to get the proper ergonomics at work. And that started to help. And then she showed me some other muscles that the other physiotherapists hadn't pointed out before, like the serratus anterior was basically, it had forgotten how to work. Like she poked, like she's like, do this, move your arm this way. She's like, no, don't use your chest, you have to use this one. So yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, it was. And when I mentioned floating to her, she was really encouraging that. She's like, "Oh yeah, you should. If you like it, then do it, because I think it's a good
Yeah.
method." So because it's considered sort of alternative to do the float tank stuff still. And when I
Yeah.
tell people about it, they're still sort of like, "Oh, I don't know, you're stuck in a tank in the dark." And
It's very relaxing, and it's taking all of those other senses away, and so it's making you tune into your body.
yeah, yeah, I really love it. And now that I have been practicing somatics, and um, I've started to actually do some of it in the float tank, and it
Yeah.
just makes my body like even more relaxed and more
Yeah.
aware of all the way that moving one muscle moves actually your entire body, because there's no gravity to like hold you
Mm.
down, so you actually see how moving can influence the whole rest of your body. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just want to touch on you talking about the affordability to see a therapist, because I see lots of people do this, and I see a lot of people who have spent sometimes tens of thousands of dollars trying to seek therapy, even going for surgery, and it not working for them. So I think, and you said one of the last physios that you saw was the one who was encouraging you to do the float stuff that you were doing intuitively anyway, and also identifying posture. So I think sometimes it's about finding the right therapist.
Mm,
And if you can notice a change each time, you can see the value in it. But
totally.
if someone's just keeping you in a holding pattern, that's perhaps when you can't see the value. And it's
Hmm.
great that you kept on searching around and trying different people. And thankfully, you found someone. But yeah, unfortunately, people do just get stuck in this hamster wheel of thinking to rely on treatment. So I probably just want to send that message out to people that spend the money and invest in your health, but make sure it feels right and that you feel like you're actually getting a positive change and someone's identifying things that resonate for you.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It definitely felt more worth it once I found her. And like I did
Yeah.
go back for a longer period of time, and I would definitely go back to her again if I had another issue. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then you were doing some yoga as well. What was your approach to yoga to try and rehab?
Yeah, so I mean, I started doing yoga for a long time, like as a in first year university. I think that was the first year class I really did, and so it's been a part of my life for a long time on some level. And I did my yoga teacher training 5 years ago, and at that point, I was being more mindful of my approach compared to before, when um, I was a student and getting more into power yoga. It was sort of like, push, 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 and
Mm,
do your chaturangas till the cows come home, and just sort of explode your shoulders. Oh no! So, and it's like I just need to be stronger, so I got to do it more, and so that's essentially what aggravated my shoulders and made the bursitis happen.
mm,
Um, and so, I mean, I know now that it was a combination of my posture and that, but chaturanga push-up stuff is so front body heavy, and
mm.
if you're rounding a bit, then it's just like, you know bursitis waiting to happen, basically, in my
Yeah,
experience.
you
So
compensate until you can't anymore.
yeah, so once I did my training, I was already more aware of my injury, and not and wanting to really learn about anatomy and how to avoid injury and be a really safe teacher. So
Mm,
I was already sort of getting towards the restorative side of teaching at that point, and it was. But basically, I started teaching, and I still like vinyasa, and was one of the more in-demand classes, and so that's what I would teach most of the time, although I would usually do a bit of more low-key version. But that still had a lot of more sort of intense stuff, with a lot of repetitions with the sun salutations and that kind of thing.
Mm.
And I was trying not to, like, usually as a teacher, you can just sort of tell people to do it and not demo. So I was trying to do that more often,
Yeah.
but essentially I was still pushing a bit too hard. And then I got into pursuing the fitness training side of things because I wanted to get into being a certified group fitness instructor just in my community so I could do community centers and that kind of thing. But their approach was very, push, push.
Mm.
And so I almost finished my certification, and then I got really sick and my bursitis flared up like the worst ever. So I was like, I think I'm not supposed to finish this. I'm not usually someone who quit. Like, I always follow through with stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it took me like a year to kind of forgive myself for not doing it, even though I knew it wasn't the right thing. But so, but that was basically when I ended up finding my new physiotherapist.
Mm.
So that was a few years ago. But yeah, like all the pushing. And so I stopped doing much yoga for a while. I basically took a break from all movement instruction because I
Yeah.
was like, I feel like a fraud if I'm teaching and I don't know what the hell is happening.
Yeah.
What's happening in my body. I don't feel like I can help people authentically if I don't feel that I'm confident in my own body, is what I thought at the time. So
Yeah, and it sounds like coming through your own injury and now being pain-free for so many years is that you can confidently teach it, and that those are the lessons in our injuries. And everything that you're talking about, the vinyasa, the power yoga, and even the group training and being push, 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 that comes back to being too much in that masculine energy, and your body's just saying, no, this is not what you
yeah.
need. So I love the somatic. This is a word that a lot of more people are becoming familiar with. So somatic is about the tissues in the body, your muscular system. And I teach a lot of psychosomatics, so the mind connection with the body. And what I love about what you do is that it's the slow movement, because people who are too far in the masculine energy, they always want to do the full on stuff and feel like they're achieving, and often get driven crazy by slowing down. And I remember a yoga instructor, a friend of mine, said to me, you should do yin yoga, which is that really slow, relaxing yoga, stay in the postures for 90 seconds to 5 minutes. And I was like, I hate it. And that was at the time I was really in the masculine. I didn't know all this kind of work. And she said, well, that's even more reason why you should do it. And I agree. Like, when I have my clients who resist certain things, I'm like, why don't you just give it a go and see what happens? And I now see that that was the feminine aspect that I needed to balance out. And quite often I'm scaling stuff back from my clients, and I'm giving them slow movements where they feel awkward and they feel uncontrolled and unstable. And then I see that emotion bubble up in them, the frustration that they can't do it, when actually some of them are top athletes and they can achieve and they win goals and all that kind of stuff. But when you slow them down, it exposes the instability. And actually, if they took that step back and slowed down, rehabbed, got that stability, that foundation, then they would probably do even better in their sports or the really active activities. So yeah, feeling the quivers, feeling the shakes, and because speeding up is often a way to compensate for the lack of stability, and you just use all the wrong muscles, and it takes time to unwind it. So can you talk us through a little bit more about how you approach clinical somatic therapy and the benefits of it?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, like how you mentioned the idea of like the athletes doing it, and I have taught very athletic people, and it is really interesting seeing how difficult these exercises are for them, and watching their bodies shake and being very stiff in certain areas because their muscles are so overworked. And so one of the things that clinical somatics is targeting is the idea of sensory motor amnesia. So that's that basically we've forgotten temporarily how to control our muscles. So the slow movements help us to retrain the nervous system and stop this loop that's happening that's keeping the tension. So when I'm teaching, I mean, in general, the practice of teaching it is to really emphasize the slowness and counting down for people, and getting them to feel those shakes, because it will shake if there's any sensory motor amnesia in that muscle. You're going to start quivering, and I mean, I practice it pretty much daily, and there's always new shakes somewhere. So that's a testament to like how your body's always changing, and like it's not like you can just do this a couple times and fix it. It's an ongoing process. So part of my working with clients and creating my membership program is to help keep people accountable and recognizing the value in doing it regularly, and also that it's not that hard to do, because they are very simple, short things. So it's that's really an important aspect of clinical somatics to realize, is that it doesn't have to be an hour-long class, and it's really about integrating it into your just day-to-day habits. And like you're just standing and waiting in line, or waiting for your coffee to brew, or at something, you can just, oh, my shoulders feel kind of tight, rather than like rolling your head around and actually increasing your tension as a result because of the weight of your head. You're shrug your shoulders up to your ears, and then slowly, as slow as you possibly can, start to release them back down. And that's like a somatic exercise that can release that tension for you. So
I love that exercise.
Yeah, it's a good one. And just figuring out how to I'm trying to help people look at their day and this practice, and how to make it become just part of their lives, basically, because it is a life-changing method that can just open up so many possibilities for movement again, if people are feeling stuck, basically. So
and often when muscles have forgotten to fire, the more you can do it throughout the day, and start to challenge your brain with other things going on while you do that exercise, you're going to get better. But it takes loads of repetition, and as you say, that accountability is really important, because when people are doing something that doesn't work for them, or it doesn't feel nice, they're not inclined to keep on going, and it's so easy to bail out. So having your encouragement is really important. And I love the shoulder shrug exercise that you've just described, because a lot of people who have that trap tension, trapezius or neck and shoulder tension, they often overreact and they stretch and they crack their neck, and actually it's tight but it's weak. And when you really slow down, those muscles just shudder, and you can see it jump around on people. But very quickly, it doesn't take long for that movement to get smooth. But what frustrates me is when people, they go to the gym, or they get given these really complex movements with weights, and it's like, you're not even ready for that. You need to use even no gravity, just doing it lying on the ground. But it is cool, because you can do that driving in the car, you can do it while you're waiting in the coffee line, you can do it all the time.
Yeah, and almost any like stretch can be turned into a somatic movement, or pandiculation is the other word for it, where it's like that squeeze and release. That's what I'm finding, is that stretching, I mean, there's always this debate around stretching, and I'm not going to go there, but
what's your opinion on it? I like people who are opinionated about different things.
I mean, I love the feeling of stretching. I totally acknowledge that it feels great a lot of the time, and it actually becomes kind of addictive. And that's kind of part of the problem. Like, and when you get into yoga and you start feeling those stretching feelings like as a good thing, and you notice your gains in terms of getting more flexible and all this stuff, it's really satisfying. But with that becomes the instability if you're not doing, strength training and like cross training kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I've since practicing somatics, and getting more in depth with teaching, it's like noticing, now I'm experimenting, or I have been for a while now, instead of stretching, I'll do somatic exercises after a workout, and I'm way less sore. Like this is just experimenting in my own body.
Yeah.
I don't get as sore. I don't stay tight as long. It's because often when you're stretching, you're getting that stretch reflex where your body's trying to keep you safe. So then you're just pulling against that, and it's not really doing much in terms of, that's my experience anyway, is that once you start to sort of try these other methods, you kind of, I think a lot of the time, and I know other people in my circles have felt the same thing, where it's a lot of just like, oh, I don't stretch anymore, I just pendiculate. It's kind of interesting. But I mean, I still stretch sometimes, just because like you just go like, oh, I just want to stretch that because it feels
but don't
good.
stretch in a reactive way, or at least be aware, does this actually need a stretch, or am I just putting a band-aid on it? There's lots of controversy around the stretching. And I do notice that when muscles get strengthened or used properly or recruited properly, then often range of motion increases. And that's my probably biggest gripe with yoga. Like, I know a lot of amazing yoga teachers, so not everyone is like this, but the huge classes and this mentality that yoga is about flexibility, and actually you can cause yourself a lot more issues by being too mobile and being too flexible. And the amount of people that do warrior pose and don't engage their bum is shocking. And the shoulders and the hip girdle, people not activating their bum, is huge. And then for me, emotionally, that transfers into other stuff. So how is it that you work with people again?
How I work with them? So like in terms of a one-on-one situation, or so we'll always do like an assessment. So I'll do like since it's online right now, with all of my clients, it's basically I get them to send me photos of all the sides of their body, and I can see postural imbalances generally from that, and then I'll have a discussion with them based on what their experiences are in their body, what they're feeling, what they're having pain with, what their past injuries are, etc. Just to get a background, and that will generally confirm the things I see in the photos. And then I like to teach breathing techniques before we start to move, because breathing's pretty important for posture. So we'll do a few methods that help to bring awareness into the full sort of diaphragmic, or just like what happens when you take a deep breath. So the most effective way I've found is to like sip through a straw in your mouth, because that creates resistance and it helps to lengthen the spine. And just by doing that with people, a lot of people are shallow breathers, and that contributes to, some postural imbalances and hunching over a lot of the time. That already just gets them feeling like, oh, I feel taller and better. And so we'll usually start with that, and then I take them through sort of a customized series of somatic exercises to target a few fundamental ones that like everyone should do, and then ones that target their specific problems. And it'll usually be 3 to 4 hour-ish sessions, if we're doing them in a sequence, because that's sort of where you feel the most benefit. And when you do it one-on-one, that's when you really get, the personalized experience and understand how the exercises are designed for those parts of the body and that kind of thing. So.
And then how often do people need to be keeping up with it in between the sessions?
Yeah, so I mean, I always, the ideal is a few minutes every day, but if that's not possible, then every other day, or I would say minimum 4 days a week, spending 20 minutes just doing, the reality is the exercises don't take that long. So you can do sort of a pretty comprehensive full body-ish, like mostly, let's call it full core. So because you want to start from the center, so everything that they'll learn initially is core torso focused. So you can do that in about 20 minutes and get a pretty thorough, once you know the exercises. So it's pretty cool how I love that, because I like efficiency. I don't know. It's maybe my German side. I don't know. But I like to be able to do things in an efficient manner, and that's the beauty of this modality, is that it is really efficient.
So you work with people one-on-one and in other ways as well, in groups?
So far, I haven't been doing groups other than like a live class online, but that's more of a streaming thing. So I can't actually, it's pretty challenging to see multiple people in a group online class. So what I'm doing now is designing a course that will be a comprehensive sort of journey through a bunch of fundamental exercises, and like kind of dripped out over the course of a month. And it'll be sort of designed around the idea of a one-on-one, where it feels more personal. And there'll be some live group sessions for feedback and questions. And so sort of more like a coaching format in a way, because since somatics you can learn them from this online perspective quite easily, since it's more about describing and listening and feeling it in your body, versus someone having to adjust you like in a yoga pose, or like there's no hands-on aspect to it. And that's really great from a person, like someone who's in pain. They often don't want to be handled if they're like, oh, I don't want you to hurt me more, kind of thing. And it's basically I lost my train of thought. It's the modality is easy to follow, as long as it's well laid out and well described. And I've seen my students, my one-on-one students, catch on very quickly through online consultations, and so that makes me confident that creating this sort of comprehensive course with community support, and we'll have a group, like a Facebook group, where we can share more, and I'll be available. And so and you learn from people's challenges as well. So
absolutely.
So I'm really hoping to I'm aiming to develop that sort of community around the practice, and really there's nothing like it around that I've seen in terms of like a clinical somatic program. So I'm excited to get it out there.
Is just so important for people who are in discomfort, pain, or that need that help with that emotional release as well, that comes with slowing down, that frustration, that anger, and having access to you to say, hey, this is what I experienced, is this normal? Because again, discomfort can come up and people go to avoid. So I look forward to when that course comes out. So how can people find you if they do want to start working one-on-one and this is resonating with them? Like, I love it. I think everyone who follows my stuff and has those emotional discomforts and the frustrations in their body should be doing something like this. I also recommend amazing Pilates instructors, anything that slows the body down, but has, this whole emotional movement connection. So how can they find you?
So I've got a website at movedeeply.com. So my business name is Move Deeply Wellness. And I'm also on Instagram as Move Deeply Wellness and on Facebook as Move Deeply, no wellness. Just Move Deeply. Someone already, no one took that one. But anyway, I just wanted to keep it. Facebook's already such a long thing. It's just easier to find.
Yeah.
But there's a clothing store called Move Deeply on Facebook though. So that's not me.
And that's not, no. Okay. Well, I'll put those links in the podcast notes so people can connect with you. And by the way, Tania does share loads of just short snippet exercises on her Instagram TV, which you can follow. So there's lots of resources for you to go in there already for free. But connect with Tania. Keep an eye out on when her course is running as well. Even though she's in Canada, it's all probably New Zealand, Australian time friendly.
Yep.
It must be.
I'll definitely make it accessible to a variety of,
Yeah. And then for people who want more the one-on-one, I think what you do is great.
Yeah, no, I love working one-on-one. It's really cool to see the progress that people get.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think it's been really great chatting, and thanks so much for letting me share things and
thank you.
Explore that emotional aspect and everything.
Yeah, it's good because most of the people I've had on so far have had a lot of disease state stuff going on in their body, which I find fascinating. But I don't want to glance over the musculoskeletal stuff because that's what most people will experience, but don't really look into or make the connection with what's going on in their life or their job. So it's just nice to hear from other people how the weight lifted when you sent in that resignation. And I've got lots of stories like that. And yeah, so I appreciate you sharing that, and also the clinical somatics aspect and slowing down with movement.
Yeah, no, it's really, I think, important for people to realize that it's not just getting older. Like, yes, we age and things do degrade, but in terms of the muscular system, things first start to hit you in your 30s usually. But that's simply because of 30 years of accumulated habits that are starting to, your sensory motor amnesia is like starting to come out at that point, basically. So that's it's like, you're not just getting older, don't give up. There's always things to can do.
I've hit 30 and it's all downhill. And then others say I hit 40 and it's all downhill. And that's just a belief system.
Yeah, totally.
I haven't experienced that when I hit 30, and I hope I don't when I hit 40 as well. So if you're getting to 30, reach out to Tania. All right. Thanks so much, Tania.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's Pain Story interview on the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. Anything shared during this episode is for information only. It does not replace professional advice from a healthcare practitioner. If you are experiencing pain, injury, or illness, seek advice that is catered to your individual needs. Thanks for learning with me on the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. If you like what you've heard, I would love if you could rate, review, and share with your friends. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. My handle is The Art of Listening to Your Body. You can join my free Facebook group where I go live regularly to teach you about different conditions and the deeper underlying emotions at play.